Well, greetings everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Topic UFO. Tonight we are extremely lucky to have a very well-known name in the field of ufology, Mr. L.A. Marzulli. I'm sure most of you have either heard of him, know of his work, seen his videos, seen him speak, what have you. And so we're just very, very lucky to have him here tonight. Because the show's only a half an hour, I want to spend as much time with him as I can, so we're just going to go right to it. Mr. Marzulli, are you out there, sir?
I certainly am, and thank you for having me on. It's really a pleasure to be here, Rick.
Well, thank you very much. May I call you L.A.?
Please do, by all means.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, L.A., I found over the last 2 years of doing this show that there seems to be two major camps, if you will, when it comes to this subject of ufology. There's this scientific camp, and then there's the more spiritual, religious, biblical viewpoint towards the subject of ufology. Now, you take up a biblical viewpoint. Would that be fair in saying?
Well, yeah, but I also look at it very scientifically. I look at, this is hardcore evidence, and we need to define, just because we talk from, let's say, a biblical worldview, what we're talking about here is that these are, in fact, interdimensional beings, not extraterrestrial beings. And so the two paradigms, I think, can be broken out that way. That if they are interdimensional beings, they're not coming from the Pleiades or Zeta Reticuli or wherever. They're coming in from some other dimension. And this is the basis of my work. And I look at ancient biblical texts and say, gee, are there any similarities between what's going on now and what we see in antiquity? And, of course, in my opinion, the answer to that is yes.
And you are the author of the Nephilim trilogy. We've had a couple of guests on in the past that have talked about the Nephilim and their connection with UFOs. Can you talk to us a little bit about your thoughts and theories as far as this Nephilim and current day UFOs?
I'd love to. In fact, my partner and I, Richard Shaw, who do the Watcher series, we do these things together. We were talking about this today, and Rick, unfortunately, I couldn't go to the meeting, but Bob Salvos was talking this actually Saturday night about his experience with the UFO phenomena and what happened to him at a missile silo. I forget what state it was in, and how they lifted, the UFO craft lifted these very large concrete seals off the silos, just floated them. Just lifted them up. And Rick and I made the connection that this is precisely what we see in these ancient megalithic structures, i.e. the Great Pyramid, let's say Sacsayhuaman or Ollantaytambo. It's just, we believe it's the same guys. It's connected to all this stuff. And the Nephilim goes back thousands and thousands of years. We read about them first in the book of Genesis, the first book of the Hebrew Bible. And it says very specifically that the sons of God saw the daughters of men and took wives from whoever they chose, went into them in the biblical sense, they had sex with them. And the offspring was this demonic creature known as a Nephilim. We get further insight into this from the book of Enoch, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, quoted in the Tanakh, the Jewish scriptures, about 70 times, found in the New Testament, alluded to the Christian New Testament several times. So the book of Enoch, widely read, many church historians quote the book of Enoch. But the book of Enoch amplifies the Genesis 6 text further and basically states that these beings, these fallen angels, came. They showed, quote, the secrets of heaven, end of quote. Some of those were, believe it or not, cosmetics, astrology, weapon making, planting, quid pro quo. There was something, a trade. They had access. They were given access to the women by the men. That's where they took wives, and in exchange for that, they gave the men the art of weapon making and all these other, like astrology, medicines, what roots are used for the cuttings of roots and all this kind of stuff, and so there was again this quid pro quo. What's interesting about this is when we read in modern ufology, same type of thing happens. These creatures, wherever they're from, show themselves, and there's a quid pro quo. Hey, we'll give you the technology. Let us have access to the population. Oh, and we promise we'll keep track of them. Well, that lasts about a week and a half, right? And it's gone. And the abduction phenomena continues today, and the breeding program continues today. The breeding program is analogous to what happened back in Genesis 6. We are told in ancient prophetic scriptures from a biblical worldview that it will be like the days of Noah when history reaches a climax. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's another part of that scripture, but I'll leave that out right now. I'm kind of substituting it to keep this sort of softball stuff. But when it'll be like the days of Noah in the end. So the question is, when we look at the earthquakes, the tsunamis, the animal and fish die-off, the nuclear stuff, the wars and rumors of wars that are happening on a global level, the rise of terrorism on a global level, the bizarre temperatures records which are shattered and broken, record droughts, record rainfall. Look at Colorado, the 1,000-year flood. I mean, need I go on?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anybody who doesn't keep track of this stuff is either asleep or living under a rock. It's like this stuff is everywhere, and this is precisely what these ancient biblical texts tell us will happen in the sign of the end. So we got this ancient scripture, 2,000 years old, which tells us to be like the days of Noah. Well, what differentiates the days of Noah? That immediately begs the question: why is this scripture, this text, pointing back to the days of Noah? What's so important about the days of Noah? And bingo, that's where we get the rise and the manifestation of the Nephilim on the face of the earth, which results, by the way, in the flood. These were the Nephilim were very tall back then. They were charged. Think of X-Files X-Men meets the Hulk. That's what we're looking at.
Wow. X-Men
meets the Hulk. They have superhuman power. And this results in the global flood, which, by the way, is in pretty much every culture, they have a flood story. It varies from culture to culture, but there's a flood story everywhere, globally. Something's going on, and I equate what happened then to the angelic beings. And, the moment you say angel, people start rolling their eyeballs. They have no idea what we're looking at here.
Right.
These are incredibly powerful beings. Angel just means messenger. We're really not told what they're really called. They're just called messengers. Well, they are messengers, but there's so much more than that. And encounters with these beings, usually when we read these ancient accounts, anyone who has a dealing with the good guys winds up doing a face plant, literally, on the ground. They short circuit. They just like, doing, they're right on the ground. As they basically faint. They can't stand in the presence of these angelic creatures. And the good guys go up, and it's okay, sorry, I didn't really mean to do that. I'll stand up. Are you feeling a little better? Oh, okay, hold on. I'm kind of joking with it, but that's what they do.
Right.
The good guys are always like, being real friendly. The bad guys, on the other hand, when they show up, it's a whole different deal. They move in a climate of fear, of surreptitious activity, cover of nightfall, death and destruction is in their wake. Oh, gee, welcome to the abduction phenomena in modernity. The two are almost synonymous.
So now, these Nephilim have always been a dimensional being or whatever, and they come and go, and are the UFOs that we're seeing and are reported nearly every day on this planet,
Sure.
are those craft with Nephilim in them? Are they Nephilim energy? What is there a connection with the actual objects that we're seeing? or is that something
Well,
completely different?
no, it's not. What's very interesting to me about the whole UFO phenomena is that we were down for Watcher 7, which is our new show on UFOs completely. We talked to Jaime Maussan, probably one of the most revered UFO researchers on the planet. I mean, this guy's got a staff of people, a 2-hour television show weekly in Mexico, and he's out in the field photographing this stuff and doing research, and he gave us everything. I mean, he just gave us unbelievable footage. And the crafts, they have an ability to, some appear as a diamond, pyramid, the obviously silver classic disc that we all know, cigar shape, squares. I mean, there's just everything that's out there. I mean, I watch these things literally shape shift, if I can use that expression,
Right.
in midair. It's like, well, what the heck are we looking at here? Pyramids over Moscow, pyramids over the huge boomerangs, the triangles. I mean, it's just all different shapes, all different sizes. And what we see is the fact that their ability to morph. Some are literally nuts and bolts craft, but they're not nuts and bolts as we know it. The craft almost seem alive, and abductees talk about this. Then we get the Roswell stuff with Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr., who I interviewed for one of my books, and I actually met him, and we talked, and he sat down and did this wonderful interview. And, the whole idea of the memory metal and the stuff that they saw on the craft, just unbelievable. Look, we know from the Book of Enoch that these angelic beings have some sort of technology, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Albeit it's primitive, that they show in the Book of Enoch. Where they show up and go, hey, here's some swords and shields and bow and arrows, and we'll show you this stuff and show you how to make this cool stuff. Let us have access to the women. Well, skip thousands of years in the future. Here, we'll give you these craft if you let us have access to the women. It's almost the same thing. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's like, oh, okay. They were here once before, and it looks like they're here back again. Technology is real, absolutely, but it doesn't. And from the Book of Enoch, they're giving us shields and knives and spears and who knows what else. That would be like akin to Columbus coming over here and giving some trinkets and beads to the Native Americans. Meanwhile, they got muskets and cannons and everything else on the ship.
Right.
So they're holding back what they really got. The same thing here is happening. Corso, before he died, Philip Corso wrote the book and told us that he had privy to this information, back engineering, and Stanton Friedman's looked at all this stuff and sort of says, well, I don't agree with Corso. A lot of infighting. We're not sure really, who's telling the truth and who isn't. But there does seem to be a spike with technology, certainly that we get right after World War II.
Right.
And here we are with microwaves and all this stuff and cell phones. And look, I'm not saying we could have invented that, fiber optics. But I think there's also could be some back engineering stuff here, which could have been from, let's say, Roswell or somewhere else. I'm kind of rumbling around as the topic is so vast, but I do believe in both. I believe that the craft, to be really succinct here, some of the craft are definitely nuts and bolts. Other parts can be just supernatural manifestations. Just because we see a ball of light, that doesn't mean it's a hard. It's a nuts and bolts craft, as it were.
Right. It's how we perceive it is basically.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Now, pardon my ignorance here, but so if the Nephilim want access to our women, I take it's to procreate another half human being or whatever it would come out. It's not just for sexual pleasure, right?
No. Let's back up. First of all, the Nephilim are the byproduct of hybrid being from the fallen angelic race and the human women. That offspring is the Nephilim.
Okay, I got you.
The Nephilim are not fallen angels. The difference.
I see.
And so what we see is that this angelic host continues to do this all throughout the biblical account. Sodom and Gomorrah, perfect example. Something's going on there. We see the same type of judgment when Joshua and Caleb go into what's known as the Promised Land. Guess who's there? The Nephilim are there. Whoa, how did they get there? And this gets into my book, The Cosmic Chess Match. There's a war going on and it's happening in an unseen dimension, that from time to time spills out into this dimension. I call it the cosmic chess match. And the Nephilim are dwelling in Milan. Well, wait a minute, we wiped them all out in the flood. What the heck are they doing there now? See? So there's many incursions that's going on. And the fallen angels are back, in my opinion, with the abduction phenomena. And there is a vigorous breeding program going on. Dr. Jacobs will certainly admit that all day long. While we disagree as to the cause, Jacobs thinks they're from Zeta Reticuli, and that's fine. I don't. I think that they are interdimensional, and I can't get him to say the word evil, but nefarious. He might lean to that. He doesn't. Let me put it this way. He'll definitely. We got him on record. We interviewed him for Watcher 7. They're up to no good, and he doesn't have a good feeling about it. So you don't want to use the word evil. That's fine. I don't care. I mean, we can look at, let's say, Auschwitz, and people will go, well, some people will say, well, that's really not evil. That's just your interpretation of evil. Well, in my opinion, that's as low as human beings can get is Auschwitz, and it's there, and it's the face of evil. It's screaming at us, and you abduct a 5-year-old in the middle of his night against his parents' wishes, and that boy or girl taken aboard his ship and probed in every sort of way and absolutely terrified. That's evil. Sorry.
Yeah,
if
we
they
would
can
call a
get the
human
reticuli to planet Earth, then I got a problem with that. I really do. They know exactly. Why do they wait for the cover of darkness? They know exactly what they're doing.
Exactly. I would agree with you there. Now, tell me something, because, back on my original statement when I talked about this scientific camp and this spiritual religious camp, why do you think that is? Why do you think the scientific people seem to be so concerned with allowing any type of biblical reference into their explanation? Do they feel like it? I don't know. Why is it? Because it's just information, right? I mean, so it's biblical, fine. But
what are we afraid of?
Yeah, what is the deal
why
there?
Are we afraid? If there's a spiritual dimension in this, why can't we go there?
Right.
And look, if you're an ardent Darwinist, there is no supernatural, and a lot of the scientific community are ardent Darwinists, and there is no supernatural. Supernatural does not exist. They won't go there, and the moment they do, it opens up a whole paradigm which many of these people do not want to embrace. The other part, I think, is that the church over the last 2,000 years has done a wonderful job of isolating pretty much everybody. and as a representative of the Christian church, I would offer my sincere apologies to those of you who are listening to this and who have been absolutely waylaid and massacred by the church. And there's a lot of that out there. I mean, there's a lot of that out there. I talk to people all the time that left the church and don't want to go back. And what people don't understand is the church is a man-made organization for the most part. And, when you go on religious channels, let's say on TV, I just sit there with my jaw on the ground going, how can these people do this?
Right.
What is going, it's just insanity, absolute insanity. And people need to understand that what is actually in the scriptures, and I refer to the Bible, I call it the guidebook to the supernatural, because that's what it really is. And you can throw all those stuff like, monks with funny haircuts and rosary beads and stations of the cross and basilicas and cathedrals and all this nonsense, and hucksters on TV selling holy water. Just chuck it all away.
Yeah.
Chuck it all away. It has nothing to do with anything. It's all man-made gobbledygook. It's the biggest bunch of nonsense that's ever been put out there. And what it does is it obfuscates and keeps people away from actually seeking what's really going on. What's really going on is a guidebook to the supernatural.
I got you. Now, I'll tell you, L.A., I come from a scientific side of the fence. I have never been a religious person, I guess you would say. But
I'm not either.
If you have to take all the information. If you're going to make an educated decision on something, you got to look at all the information, no matter whether somebody thinks it's, I don't know what. You see what I'm getting at, though. You see what I'm getting at. I just think if we don't look at the biblical side of it, we're wasting a lot of information. I just feel, because I feel the final answer is going to fall somewhere in between. That's just my personal thought.
And look, eventually it'll become self-evident. In the words of Jacques Vallée and Hynek, both of them called these, Vallée in particular, messengers of deception. That's what he labels these entities. He calls them messengers of deception.
Right.
And every abductee that I talk to will tell me, even those with the Stockhausen syndrome, which have sided with their abductors after 20 or 30 years, like Patty Hearst did when she was abducted.
Right.
And taken against her will. Stockhausen syndrome. People begin to side with their abductors because they have no other choice, sort of. And everyone I've ever talked to, these beings, these entities lie, and they lie all the time. And the biblical text says, "Hey, who's the father of lies?" I mean, it tells you right there, who is the father of lies? Who is the father of lies? And it's like, if they're really from Zeta Reticuli, why not give us the cause, the cure to cancer? Why not give us something good?
Okay.
It's never that. It's they're focused on a breeding program. They are trying to create what I believe is a modern-day Nephilim, which will pass for human, but like the guys in the X-Men, they'll have superhuman powers, and the world will go, "Wow, this is amazing."
And then what? Eventually, they will arise and take over the human race? Is that the end game?
Yeah, the end game is this, and this might be a little bizarre for people to get into. I don't know how much time we have because it takes a little bit of time to set up. It has to do with my research on the abduction phenomena, and in particular, the implants which are taken from abductees.
Right.
The implants seem to be changing the host DNA. That's the theory that we're going on. These are not tags like, you tag a deer or tag a shark in the water, you can follow it around. That's not what these things are. These are sophisticated microcomputers that are inserted in people, and there are many different kinds. There is an evolution to these implants which Dr. Roger Lear has taken out. We know that.
Right.
And I believe they are changing the host DNA. And with that being said, I'll get some water. We know, again, from ancient prophetic texts, specifically in the book of Revelation, that at some point in time, there's going to be a mark that's put on all men and women. It'll be on the back of the hand or on the forehead. It'll be some sort of a mark. Well, when you actually look at the Greek in that, it's actually a puncturing of the skin. So it could be that something is inserted. What we do know about the mark is that it's insidious, and there's a judgment, there's a finality. Anyone who takes this thing is basically winds up in this place known as the lake of fire. They're completely ostracized. And you say to yourself, wait a minute. Why does this loving God supposedly, where's the grace and mercy here? Why is he throwing all these people into the lake of fire? This doesn't sound fair, and it's not. Unless you start plugging in the Nephilim, and you realize that these entities, whatever you want to call them, you can call them Elmer Fuds for all I care. The word is messenger in the Hebrew. Same deal in the Greek. They seem to be doing some kind of a breeding program, and we see the same judgment meted out in Noah's flood, Sodom and Gomorrah, the conquest of Levant or Israel, where the mandate comes down to wipe them all out and burn them all. That doesn't sound very friendly and very nice unless you realize that these entities are demonic hybrids, beings. They are just evil. They are malevolent beings, the Nephilim. Well, guess what? When they show up, and look, anybody out there has got an implant, I'm not saying that you're becoming a Nephilim. These are all prototypes. I'm saying that what's happening with the abduction phenomena and these implantable chips, which are, I believe, DNA changers, when they show up, they'll have two things. One will be a free energy source, the energy that pilots the craft, and Stephen Greer talks about this stuff as well as Stephen Bassett and everybody else. Mm-hmm. We all know it's out there, 0-point energy. It's out there. They've got it and they're using it. That's what they'll give to us. That's a major game changer. The second thing is they'll say, hey, we created you guys. You're literally your progenitors. We were here thousands of years ago. We genetically manipulated you, started the world's civilizations, the world's religions, and now at this critical juncture in human history, and this is where we are, we're here to usher you, the human race, into a time of peace, prosperity, and knowledge. And guess what? We've got a DNA upgrade for you guys. Take this little chip. You'll live 500 years or older, disease-free. You'll even have maybe some superhuman powers. The lines for that will go around the block. People will line up. Have you ever seen the singularity deal with Michio Kaku?
Yes.
Going, how many people want it? And they're all people are just jumping up and down. I do.
Right.
They don't want to be cyborgs. Give it to me now. And that's what's coming. And I've written about this in all my books. I call it the coming great deception, and it dovetails with Darwinism, and the basis of it is from these ancient prophetic texts which warn of a time, some sort of a great deception which is coming. And what's here is the UFO phenomena. That's what the deception is.
Wow.
And I just outlined it and linked it to ancient biblical texts, which is what's happening in modernity.
Listen, I wanted to ask you, one of the people that helped me get ready for tonight's show, Gary Thomas, had some questions that he wanted me to ask, and I want to try to ask you, if I may, just a couple. I understand you took a recent trip to Peru.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that was about?
Sure. Well, this is all in the book. It's first of all, it's in Watcher 6, the Cosmic War, and second of all, it's in a new book called On the Trail of a Nephilim. And I'm staring at the cast of the skull that we made while we were down in Peru. Joe Taylor of Mount Blanco Fossil Museum.
Yes, he's been on the show.
Which is just astounding, and it's all in the new book. And the reason why we went down to Peru and hooked up with Forrester is because we realized that there seemed to be genetic manipulation happening down there. And because, unlike here, where all this stuff is locked up and you can't view anything or see anything and blah, 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 we were able to go to private museums, photograph, handle, weigh, bring back some hair samples. And what's interesting, let me just tell you this. I'll just cut to the chase because I know we don't have a lot of time, okay?
Okay.
We took this red hair from a being with an elongated skull and only one parietal plate. All human beings have four parietal plates. A frontal plate, four plates. A frontal plate, two parietals, which is the plates on top, and an occipital plate in the rear. Okay, the ones in Peru that were not the result of cranial deformation or cradle headboarding, most of these had only one parietal plate with not a hint of a parietal suture, which is the seam which go from the frontal plate, the top of that forehead frontal plate, all the way back to the occipital plate. It's not there, not even a hint of the thing, okay? So first of all, we've got these elongated skulls with only one parietal plate. That's really strange. That's a genetic anomaly. Well, we took the red hair from this 2,000-year-old, possibly older skull. We brought it back to the States. There's a machine called Raman spectroscopy. What this does is it measures the molecular structure of an item that you put in it and examines it, and it plots the results on a graph. So we took the red hair, then we took a human hair, okay, normal human hair, and then we wanted to see if this red hair from Peru was dyed. So we took a human hair that had been dyed. So now we have three hairs because people were saying, oh, they just dyed their hair red. These are all Native Americans. Not so fast, my friend. Not so fast. The fourth hair we took was from a man who had been abducted and forced to have sex with a hybrid being. The hair was white. Okay?
Okay.
Just like we hear about in all the UFO stories. The hair was white, blonde, almost whitish hair. Now we have four hairs: human hair, dyed human hair, red hair from Paracas, and the blonde, whitish hair from a hybrid creature that was aboard a UFO that a guy was forced to have sex with. Pretty weird stuff. Put them all into the Raman spectroscopy. And this will be in Volume 2. We show it in Watchers 6, the Secret Cosmic War. Human hair comes on the left side of the graph and does like a horseshoe. It kind of goes up and then, or an upside down, or a horseshoe, upside down letter U, and then just goes right down to the bottom. The dyed human hair comes in at the same place that the human hair does and zips right up and out the top of the Grafton is gone, all right? The dyed human hair. So we see that there's a similarity, but because it's dyed, woo, it's right off the charts. Now comes the fun part. The red hair from Paracas and the white hair from a man abducted 5-6 years ago, they start in the same place on the graft, and they track with each other. Every little movement, every line, every blip of the change of the slope as it's going, they track with each other. When we all saw that, we about fell out of our chairs.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and what this does, it's not conclusive yet, but what it does, this is what I mean. Science meets the Bible.
Right.
This is hardcore physical evidence that genetic manipulation was going on in antiquity, and the same thing is happening in modernity. And we've got the science. No one's ever done that before. We're the first. No one's ever done that.
Wow, that is amazing stuff, L.A. Just amazing. I understand. Did one of these exhibits about these skulls get closed down for some reason, or was there something going on down there in Peru?
Oh yeah. There were. Look, the window is tightening, and I just got back. I'm not at liberty to discuss. This will be in volume 2, and I realized, well, it's a great marketing ploy. L.A. Don't tell us what you're finding. I've got to wait till I publish the next book.
I understand.
What I have found recently with photographic evidence is just amazing, and that's going to be fun when that comes out.
Well, let's
yeah, it's going to turn some heads.
I can't wait. So, unfortunately, L.A., we have come to the end of the show. So let's talk about what you have coming up. You have a new episode of The Watchers.
Yeah, that'll be Watcher 7 will be released in early part of November, and really looking forward to that. On the Trail of a Nephilim will be released sometime early next year, probably March, April, sometime in there. We're planning another expedition down to Peru. I'll be speaking at the Paradigm Symposium, which should be really interesting. On the 19th and 20th of October this weekend, I'll be in Sparks, Nevada, speaking to a group there. That should be interesting also. And we're actually redoing the book called The Alien Interviews. I interviewed like Dr. Roger Lear.
Yes, yeah.
The late Jesse Marcel Jr., Lynn Katai from Phoenix Lights. All those interviews are written sit-down interviews where they wrote the answers. And we're redoing that. We're bringing it up to speed because it's about 4 years old. And it'll be included, or we're going to offer the DVD on UFOs and this book together, because we have a lot of stuff that people like to read too, and so we're going to kind of redo that. So there's a lot of stuff in the works, and thanks for asking.
Excellent. And now, if people want to learn more about you, say on the internet, where can they go on the internet to find you? You have a website,
I blog
correct?
6 days a week. That's lamarzulli.wordpress.com. lamarzulli.wordpress.com. I blog 6 days a week, and there's links to the website, which is really just a store. Everything that is pertinent comes on the blog. I mean, that's where I've written, like 1,600 articles or something on the blog. Yeah, about a variety. I blog every day about a variety. Today was on Fukushima, so it's not just UFOs all the time. See, all this stuff is related. We're in a supernatural universe, and it's all connected. Everything is connected. And so when I talk about Fukushima, it impacts us. It affects us.
Absolutely.
And there may be a supernatural component to that.
That stuff is almost to the West Coast. If looking at the latest data.
Yeah, it's real nasty.
It's not a good thing.
No more sushi for a while.
Yeah. How long have you been involved in this study of ufology?
I've always been interested in ancient biblical prophecy, always. So that's 33 years.
Okay.
The whole UFO phenomena, before I became a a Christian, which is 33 years ago, very interested in Eric von Däniken, very much so. Read all this stuff, read all the Carlos Castaneda stuff. I had a guru. My third eye was opened. I had spirit guides. I mean, I've been on the other side. I've been in both worlds. That's what's so interesting about it. So I come from that background. And I remember reading Eric von Däniken and just couldn't put it down, Chariots of the Gods. It was just like, oh, my gosh. It was just like, this guy's got the answer. And he piqued my interest. And, of course, this year we went to some of those places in Peru, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, other places in Cusco and Paracas. And that's, but we have a different take than Mr. von Däniken has, with all due respect. And I was on the first 2 seasons of Ancient Aliens, and the reason why we began the Watchers series is because I was so heavily edited. I mean, you're talking heavily edited, unbelievable, and that's their prerogative. But see, they have a paradigm that they're pushing. Watchers isn't afraid to talk to Dr. David Jacobs, who has a totally different worldview than I do, and get his opinion and put it on camera, and then let the people decide what they want to believe and what they don't want to believe.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Right? Well, that's what we're supposed to do.
Well, I think so.
That's what good journalism is, right?
Yeah, well, TV and journalism was gone a long time ago, I think, don't you? Real journalism.
It's all gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, listen, L.A., I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us tonight. I know you are
just was all mine.
Super busy guy, so having you take time out was just really appreciated. We'll be looking out for Watchers 7 coming out in November. And I will put up some of these other things that you're doing, Sparks, Nevada, and On the Trail of the Nephilim is going to be early next year?
Volume 2. On the Trail of the Nephilim, Volume 2 will be probably April, May, sometime in there.
Gotcha. Well, listen, we will keep watching and keep listening, and we'll wait with bated breath to find out about this stuff you found out in Peru. So
sounds good.
Sounds
good.
L.A., thank you so much again, and have a good evening.
Hey, thank you, Rick. Take care.
Bye-bye.
The answer is to keep it. You believe it when you find something screaming across your mind. Green slime.
Say, gee, are there any similarities between what's going on now and what we see in antiquity? And, of course, in my opinion, the answer to that is yes.
And you are the author of the Nephilim trilogy. We've had a couple of guests on in the past that have talked about the Nephilim and their connection with UFOs. Can you talk to us a little bit about your thoughts and theories as far as this Nephilim and current-day UFOs?
I'd love to. In fact, my partner and I, Richard Shaw, who do the Watcher series, we do these things together. We were talking about this today, and Rick, unfortunately, I couldn't go to the meeting, but Bob Salvos was talking this actually Saturday night about his experience with the UFO phenomena and what happened to him at a missile silo. I forget what state it was in, and how they lifted the UFO craft lifted these very large concrete seals off the silos, just floated them. I mean, just lifted them up. And Rick and I made the connection that this is precisely what we see in these ancient megalithic structures, i.e. the Great Pyramid, let's say Sacsayhuaman or Yitzhak. It's just we believe it's the same guys. It's connected to all this stuff, and the Nephilim goes back thousands and thousands of years. We read about them first in the book of Genesis, the first book of the Hebrew Bible, and it says very specifically that the sons of God saw the daughters of men and took wives from whoever they chose, went into them in the biblical sense. They had sex with them, and the offspring was this demonic creature known as a Nephilim. We get further insight into this from the book of Enoch, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, quoted in the Tanakh, the Jewish scriptures, about 70 times, found in the New Testament, alluded to the Christian New Testament several times. So the book of Enoch, widely read, many church historians quote the book of Enoch. But the book of Enoch amplifies the Genesis 6 text further, and basically states that these beings, these fallen angels, came, they showed, quote, the secrets of heaven, end of quote. Some of those were, believe it or not, cosmetics, astrology, weapon making.
Well, greetings everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Topic UFO. Tonight we are extremely lucky to have a very well-known name in the field of ufology, Mr. L.A. Marzulli. I'm sure most of you have either heard of him, know of his work, seen his videos, seen him speak, what have you. And so we're just very, very lucky to have him here tonight. Because the show's only a half an hour, I want to spend as much time with him as I can, so we're just going to go right to it. Mr. Marzulli, are you out there, sir?
I certainly am, and thank you for having me on. It's really a pleasure to be here, Rick.
Well, thank you very much. May I call you L.A.?
Please do, by all means.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, L.A., I found over the last 2 years of doing this show that there seems to be two major camps, if you will, when it comes to this subject of ufology. There's this scientific camp, and then there's the more spiritual, religious, biblical viewpoint towards the subject of ufology. Now, you take up a biblical viewpoint. Would that be fair and sane?
Well, yeah, but I also look at it very scientifically. I look at, this is hardcore evidence, and we need to define, just because we talk from, let's say, a biblical worldview, what we're talking about here is that these are, in fact, interdimensional beings, not extraterrestrial beings. And so the two paradigms, I think, can be broken out that way. That if they are interdimensional beings, they're not coming from the Pleiades or Zeta Reticuli or wherever, they're coming in from some other dimension. And this is the basis of my work. And I look at ancient biblical texts and planting quid pro quo. There was something, a trade. They were given access to the women by the men. That's where they took wives. And in exchange for that, they gave the men the art of weapon making and all these other, like astrology, medicines, what roots are used for the cuttings of roots and all this kind of stuff. And so there was, again, this quid pro quo. What's interesting about this is when we read in modern ufology, same type of thing happens. These creatures, wherever they're from, show themselves, and there's a quid pro quo. Hey, we'll give you the technology. Let us have access to the population. Oh, and we promise we'll keep track of them. Well, that lasts about a week and a half, right? And it's gone. And the abduction phenomena continues today. and the breeding program continues today. The breeding program is analogous to what happened back in Genesis 6. We are told in ancient prophetic scriptures from a biblical worldview that it will be like the days of Noah when history reaches a climax. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's another part of that scripture, but I'll leave that out right now. I'm kind of substituting it to keep this sort of softball stuff. But when it'll be like the days of Noah in the end. So the